The Habsburg, the Romanovs, the Rothschild, some of the wealthiest old money families in modern day history, with roots so deep that even revolutions and world wars could not erase their legacies. However, there is another family with so much influence in the whole of London they were controversially known to even control global politics. For centuries, they have controlled prime stretches of London, including some of the world's most prestigious neighborhoods, Mayfair, Belgravia, and beyond. This family owns estates, residential properties, tech investments, and many more, estimated to have reached billions of dollars. But who are they? This is the story of the old money family you have never heard of. This story is about the Grosvenor family, one of the greatest dynasties in the history of London. But first, we need to get back to where it all began, in a bloody era of sword and shield, of betrayal and ambition. The year was 1066, and England was on the brink of war. It was an age of brutal conquest, with one name on everyone's lips: William the Conqueror. Sailing across the English Channel with 600 ships and 7,000 fierce soldiers, William believed himself the rightful heir to the English throne. When King Edward died without an heir, he had named William as a successor, but in William's absence, the throne was seized by Harold Godwinson, who boldly crowned himself King Harold II. Fueled by righteous anger, William gathered an army determined to reclaim what he saw as his birthright or die trying. The battle was bloody and historic, with William's forces clashing against Harold's men in a brutal showdown. Fortunately for him, William won the battle, and with it came the crown of England. By his side was a loyal knight named Gilbert le Grosvenor, a founding figure of what would eventually become the Grosvenor dynasty. In recognition of his loyalty, William granted Gilbert land, wealth, and a place at court. And so, Grosvenor had arrived, now ranked among Britain's power players, setting a legacy of wealth and influence that would dominate for 1,000 years. In 1665, a killer swept through the streets of London. But this wasn't a human assassin. It was a disease of devastating proportions, the Great Plague of London. This deadly sickness claimed thousands of lives, erasing roughly 15% of the city's population in its path. But how did it all begin? The earliest cases surfaced in the spring of 1665, and in a few months, the plague was out of control, killing around 1,000 people every week. London's leaders scrambled to slow the epidemic. The Lord Mayor issued orders to clear the trash-filled streets and deodorize the air, hoping these measures might curb the spread. This time, men were hired to eliminate the city's thousands of stray dogs and cats, suspected by some to be carriers of the disease. Over 60,000 animals were slaughtered, yet the plague went on a killing spree. Many London doctors, merchants, lawyers, and even King Charles II himself fled the city. They left behind the poor, trapped and helpless in plague-ridden neighborhoods. For nearly a year, London was held in this horror, and when the plague finally subsided, around 69,000 Londoners were dead. But just when the city thought it might begin to recover, London faced a new nightmare, one even more uncontrollable than the plague. This time, it wasn't disease but fire. A fire so intense, it would forever be remembered as the Great Fire of London. The year was 1666, and London was a city packed with timber-framed houses, their walls covered in pitch, a sticky, flammable substance with thatched roofs. Without a single fire brigade in the city, London was a disaster waiting to happen. It took just one careless spark to bring it all down. In a small bakery on Pudding Lane, that spark became a deadly flame. The baker and his family were sleeping upstairs when an ember from the oven landed on a pile of wood, igniting a spark nearby. Soon, the flames spread through the bakery. By the time someone raised the alarm, the family narrowly escaped only by crawling out of a window onto a neighbor's roof. As they shouted for help, the flames tore through the city. For 2 days, the fire raged, consuming London. Buckets of water were no match for the inferno, which turned the city into one massive bonfire. Days later, flames had reached two of London's most iconic buildings, St. Paul's Cathedral and the Royal Exchange. Desperate to contain the blaze, the Navy began to blow up houses in its path, creating fire breaks in hopes of stopping the inferno from spreading further. Eventually, the fire was largely under control. Meanwhile, about 13,000 homes were already reduced to ashes, along with countless businesses, shops, and historic landmarks. In the aftermath of the Great Fire of London, 3 different plans were presented to the king for rebuilding the city, but the Grosvenors saw a chance to double their family fortune in ways that would change their legacy forever. By 1677, less than a decade after the fire had left London in tatters, the city was still covered by the smell of charred timber, but one man, Sir Thomas Grosvenor, decided to celebrate by getting married. However, this wasn't just any marriage. It was the jackpot of a lifetime. Thomas's bride-to-be was Mary Davies, an ordinary-looking young woman with a dowry that was anything but ordinary. Mary Davies' dowry came with tracts of prime land around London, land that developers would soon be fighting over as the city rebuilt. Rumors had it that Thomas was less in love with Mary than he was with her land. But for the Grosvenor, the marriage was a strategy, and marrying Mary was the ultimate move, one that would make Thomas one of the wealthiest landholders in London. Thomas and Mary's wedding was a grand affair, and as expected, her properties became part of the Grosvenor estate. This land quickly turned into a powerful income stream for the Grosvenors, who now held control over key areas around the rapidly growing city. Together, Thomas and Mary had many kids and a seemingly happy marriage, but it was their son, Richard Grosvenor, who would take the family's fortune from millions to billions. By the 18th century, London was evolving. The wooden houses destroyed by the fire were being replaced by sturdy structures of stone and brick. The city was transforming into an ambitious metropolis. But no one was more ambitious than Richard Grosvenor. Richard had a vision for the family's lands. He wanted to create an elite neighborhood west of London, a sophisticated enclave for Britain's wealthiest families. In 1710, Richard began his ambitious project. He took the muddy fields inherited from his mother and started converting them, one building at a time, into a luxurious residential estate. He called it Mayfair. Richard wanted Mayfair to be the crown jewel of London, a place where the upper class would clamor to live. Mayfair grew into exactly that, a luxurious neighborhood with elegant mansions, townhouses, and lush green squares. It became the epicenter of British aristocracy. The rich and powerful abandoned their outdated estates to move into Mayfair's exclusive residences, eager to be part of this new symbol of prestige. Right on the edge of Mayfair was Hyde Park, a 600-acre haven where kings once hunted and elites gathered to flaunt their status. In the summer, Mayfair and Belgravia come alive with a riot of color, but the Grosvenors weren't satisfied with just creating these spectacular estates. They had bigger plans. Having already proven themselves as masters of high-class residential development, they decided to expand further. So they went on to build Belgravia, another luxury estate. As they constructed more and more opulent buildings and estates, the Grosvenors' wealth increased. The next generation of Grosvenors took things to a level that would be impossible to ignore. They already owned many swaths of land across London, and now they turned that land into an empire of luxury estates, castles, and grand properties. But what did they do with all the money they were getting from leasing these estates? Simple. Buy even more land and build even more property. Within a short few years, they had become Britain's largest property developers, controlling half of London's buildings and land. They weren't just the richest family in London, they were shaping the very city itself. As their influence swelled, they found themselves rubbing shoulders with the most powerful figures in the country, the British royal family. Their land holdings, particularly in London's prestigious West End, made them unavoidable players in British society. It was only a matter of time before their dominance was officially recognized. In 1874, Queen Victoria conferred a title on the family as royalty in all but name. Hugh Grosvenor, another generation in the family, was granted the title of Duke of Westminster, the most recent dukedom ever bestowed upon someone not directly related to the royal family. By giving the Grosvenors this title, Queen Victoria elevated their status to the upper echelons of British nobility. The family fortune is now in the hands of Hugh Grosvenor, the young Duke of Westminster. At just in his 20s, Hugh now oversees the Grosvenor estate, a colossal empire of land, property, and investments. And he's no stranger to the royal family. He is close friends with them, continuing the Grosvenors' tradition of rubbing elbows with the monarchy. Fast forward to today, and the Grosvenors have built a legacy across many centuries. London was booming economically and physically, and the West End saw the rise of new hotels, theaters, and department stores. The Grosvenors were shaping this growth, implementing grand new developments even as they overcame the impact of World War I. With steel-framed construction techniques, They introduced towering mansion blocks and commercial buildings that stretched the city's skyline. In 2012, Grosvenor made an unexpected move beyond property after they created Wheatsheaf Group, now known as Grosvenor Food and Ag Tech. By investing in sustainable food and agriculture, the Grosvenors could champion health, environmental reform, and producer welfare, all while quietly strengthening their empire for the next century.